And now some words of Torah from Benjamin Singer.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you. I'm Benjamin Singer, and it is genuinely so wonderful to see so many friends and supporters here in this room. I spent the last 3 days traveling across the country to a democracy conference, and I'm often traveling across the state. So I'm here in my rumpled suit feeling pretty exhausted, but it feels like being at home, even though I've only been to CRC a handful of times. One of those was 15 years ago, where I actually signed a friend's ketubah right there in that library. Little did I know it would lead to me here today, giving a Dvar Torah during a crisis in our democracy. I love this community, its people, its music, its commitment to justice. And it feels sort of like being at home turf, maybe the away version of home turf. My wife Sarah and I go to Kolrina. I grew up going to Solomon Schechter, now Mirowitz. And a couple of weeks ago when I was here for Shabbat morning services, Rabbi Bogart spoke beautifully about Jacob, Yaakov stealing, tricking Esau into giving away his blessing. It wasn't exactly Jacob's finest moment, and if Hollywood were to remake it, the trailer would say, "One man, one bowl of lentils, one very gullible brother." And now in this week's Parashat Vayishlach, we do get this full circle moment where Jacob is terrified of seeing his brother Esau again. His messengers come back saying, he's on his way, and he's got 400 men with him. So this isn't how you want your estranged brother, who's known to be violent and swore he would kill you, to greet you and say hello after 20 years. It's more like the opening scene of Gladiator. And while this is my first Dvar Torah at CRC, I will have the audacity of speaking about the very Jewish concept of karma. Yes, karma. And I'm not going to talk about an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. That's not in this week's Parsha, and it's not one I want to literally advocate for, unless we want a society of Missourians who are blind and toothless wandering around looking for their polling places. What an image, right? But what Torah does give us this week is a model of restorative justice, how to mend a very broken and unjust situation, and how to move forward, walk forward, and cross that river towards a brighter future with less fear. Before we go deeper into that, I want to express why I'm grateful to Nancy Yawitz, who is too ill to be here today but is watching remotely, and Rabbi Bogard and CRC invited me to be here today. So I'm the CEO of Show Me Integrity, which is Missouri's cross-partisan democracy reform organization. Our board includes Democrats, Republicans, and independents working together for a more representative democracy. These are people who don't necessarily vote the same way, but who believe that government works better when politicians actually have to listen to the people. What a concept. Before that, I served as communications director for the Clean Missouri Citizen Initiative in 2018, which passed a ballot initiative to end gerrymandering and reform ethics in our legislature, and passed with 62% of the vote across the state, including a majority in all 34 state Senate districts. Then 2 years later, as has happened 7 times in the last 16 years, the legislature undid it, they put it back on the ballot, and with trick language, gutted those very reforms. So after that, Show Me Integrity, right here in the city of St. Louis, passed 2 ballot initiatives for redistricting reform, for nonpartisan approval voting with a runoff so that our elections could be representative and people could choose who they actually wanted to represent them with a true majority, and for financial conflict of interest reforms, that if our elected officials have a conflict of interest on legislation, they have to recuse themselves. And oh yeah, that if the people pass a change to election laws by initiative, the Board of Aldermen can't just repeal those changes. We passed all of that. And across the state, we built a more conservative-leaning coalition called Conservatives Against Corruption of Republican former elected officials, Tea Party activists, Christian libertarians, you name it, speaking up in the media and to Republican senators saying it's not a conservative value to attack the citizen initiative, to take away people's freedom, to have a check on our government. So in that vein, I'm now the co-founder and campaign director of the Respect Missouri Voters Coalition. We have many of our volunteers here today. That is a citizen initiative to ban politicians in Missouri from attacking the will of the people. Many of those people fighting to save democracy are fellow Jews and in fact are right here in this room. The Respect Missouri Voters Amendment has 3 simple parts. It will ban politicians from overturning initiatives after voters pass them, from attacking citizens' ability to use this process, and from deceiving voters with trick ballot language. You can read more at respectmovoters.org. And for us, the rallying cry has always been about the people versus politicians. But today, in this Devar Torah, I want to go deeper, because this is also about repairing deep rifts, like between Jacob and Esau. So back to the Parsha. Jacob, is terrified. He sends the gifts. He divides his camp. This is ancient crisis management planning right here, because he thinks Esau will literally kill him. So that night, the night before they are to meet, Yaakov has a panic attack. He's pacing, he crosses the river, he thinks about running away, fleeing from a hopeless, futile, deadly situation. That night, he wrestles with an angel. Perhaps it's an emissary from God, perhaps it's his own conscience in physical form. And he gets the name Yisrael, the one who wrestles with God. He's not the first biblical leader to be terrified of his calling. Can any of you name 1 or 2 other biblical leaders who ran away terrified or hesitated in the moment of God giving them their mission? Anyone? Yes. Moshe at the burning bush. Please send someone else. I'm just a lowly shepherd with a stutter. Jonah, who literally runs the other way. Even Jeremiah, who spoke truth to power. I'm just a boy. Rashi's grandson, the Rashbam, teaches us that this is actually a Torah storytelling convention. Leaders wrestling with impossible tasks. Why? Why doesn't our Torah, our foundational story, give us examples of leaders who jump up and say, "Great news, God, liberating millions of people? No problem." Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks of blessed memory says that this is because courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being afraid, being very afraid, and doing the right thing anyway. Moshe, afraid of Pharaoh, a shepherd in the wilderness with a stutter whose family abandoned him at birth. Yonah, afraid of Nineveh, a stranger in the basement of a boat. Yaakov, afraid of Esau, someone who ran away from his family and lived homeless using a rock as a pillow. Esau also chooses courage. He chooses not to retaliate. He chooses not to escalate, and he chooses restoration over vengeance. In a world where an eye for an eye, especially in that region, spirals into endless war, Esau's decision is revolutionary Because it takes courage for Yaakov to step forward with vulnerability and offer an olive branch, and for Esau to accept it. It takes courage to do the right thing when all else seems impossible. So how does this relate to what we face in Missouri today? Many of us feel a similar fear when we look at our democracy. Do our votes really matter? Won't politicians just undo them anyway? Will they just deceive voters all over again? And are we powerless to stop all of that from happening over and over and over again? A few months ago, Rabbi Susan Talvi and I wrote an op-ed in the Jewish Light about this question. It began, what does it mean to live in a quote-unquote democracy if the voters speak and the politicians in power overturn your vote and your voice? When your officials disregard the rule of law and you have no way to hold them accountable? The Jewish community knows what happens when democracy is suspended. When freedom is thrown out the window, everybody is going to suffer. We know. These were Rabbi Talvi's words. I wanted to do something about that week's Parsha, but she wanted to look at this in a historical context. We as Jews know what happens. This has happened to us before. When our freedom is under threat, staying silent and doing nothing is not an option. For years, we actually pitched this idea of an initiative to save the initiative process to big donors, funders, political consultants, powerful groups right here in this state as well. What happened if we pass a constitutional amendment protecting constitutional amendments? And they told us, nice idea, but there's no billionaire funder who will pay for that to happen, and so it can't be done. And we believed them, because for so many of us, that's how we're used to politics working. That's how we're used to candidate campaigns and ballot initiatives being funded. But then came 2024. Here in Missouri, the legislature again playing games with ballot language, put something on the ballot saying this was about non-citizens voting, even though we've already had a law about that for 100 years. And in the fine print, of course, was banning open primaries to reduce extremism, banning ranked choice voting, and banning approval voting outside the city of St. Louis, which already has it. Meanwhile, nationally, there were about 7 states with these very kinds of reforms on the ballot, citizen initiatives to get these things done and help fix our democracy. But they were funded by big funders, and they were run by the best political consultants that money could buy, who told volunteers, don't talk, don't organize, don't help. We have the perfect polling and the perfect ads, and you're just going to screw it up. Those volunteers walked away, their passion squandered. And then, after the election, here in Missouri, back in 2024, we were trying to figure out what to do, because we were planning to move forward with reforms like that across the state of Missouri, with the wind totally taken out of our sails of this movement nationally. And Tony Easter, one of the women standing outside at the table, came to a volunteer meeting, and she said, I just gathered 878 signatures for women's health care. Back in 2018, I held a yard party in U City for Clean Missouri. It was the first thing I'd ever done politically. And if you all do an initiative to save the initiative process, I will be in the street for that, because I am tired of politicians undoing my vote and all my hard work. So we surveyed our members across this state, and 81% of them agreed. Yes, there's many important other things you could do for our democracy, but we want you to do an initiative to save the initiative and stop the deceptive language and stop them from overturning our votes. So we held a Zoom meeting, we organized 80 people, we created a Facebook group, a website, and we barnstormed the state with 25 town halls, starting in Rolla and in Fulton and in Cape Girardeau and Springfield and Joplin and Kansas City and Kirksville and St. Joseph and St. Louis. And we built a movement. We didn't want to be like Jacob at the river. We didn't want to be Moshe saying, "Who am I?" We didn't want to be Jonah running away, because we were inspired by another midrash, a modern midrash. A woman named Katie in Michigan. She was about my age today, 15 years old. Just kidding. I'm actually 37. And she posted on Facebook in November 2016, and she said, "I want to end gerrymandering in Michigan. Who wants to help?" And thousands of people flooded her Facebook comments, and they researched how to end gerrymandering and discovered this thing called a ballot initiative. And they wrote policy and researched it from scratch, came up with their best model, recruited 4,000 volunteers. Meanwhile, big establishment groups were saying, "You don't know what you're doing. Your policy is stupid. You should just do what every other state does." And they said, "No, it's not working in every other state, redistricting. We want a policy that works for people here where we live." And those 4,000 volunteers gathered 500,000 signatures. And they said, if each one of us raises $10 from 10 friends each, we can fund this movement. And they did, and they won. And now all of those groups across Michigan and across the country say, what Katie did, that campaign and that policy, that's the gold standard of how you end gerrymandering. Why do I share this? Because it answers the ancient question, who am I to save my people? Who am I to save democracy? Who was Moses? Who was Jonah? Who was Jacob? Who was Katie from Michigan with a Facebook post and a dream? She didn't have a background in politics. She worked in corporate recycling. She didn't even know what a ballot initiative was when she posted that. And so we tried it, and we did it. And I'm happy to share that on September 10th, we launched Signature Gathering from 15 towns and cities across Missouri, more than any other initiative has ever done. And today we have over 1,000 volunteers across the state gathering signatures. Over 3,000 Missourians have donated over $500,000. Over 5,000 people are in our Facebook group sharing inspiring pictures and stories and videos of them gathering signatures and talking to their neighbors across our state. And over 1,100 volunteers have gathered over 115,000 signatures to save our democracy. This is Jacob's family, once scattered, now organizing. Esau's clan, now reconciled into a shared destiny. This is restorative justice, not vengeance and fear, but repair. The Reform volunteers are most excited about, one of the parts that they shaped in this constitutional amendment is that if politicians want to change what people voted for, whatever party's in charge can't just undo it with a simple majority, as has happened so many times before. And we tell the story that when Democrats were in the majority in the legislature, they didn't like what people were doing with the initiative, and they attacked the process too and tried to make it impossible. And it was conservative Republican Governor John Ashcroft who vetoed that bill and saved the initiative process so that we can use it today. So the policy is that if politicians want to change what the people voted for, they have to get an 80% bipartisan supermajority in the House and Senate and send it back to a vote of the people. Because this isn't about Republicans versus Democrats. It's the people versus politicians, no matter what party's in charge. The only way we can make changes to our democracy is by massive groups of people from across the political spectrum working together. We know that change is sometimes needed to the will of the people. In 2006, there was an initiative to raise the minimum wage, but it had an accidental impact on firefighters' overtime, caused massive problems for cities across the state, and a unanimous vote in the Missouri Senate fixed that law. Change and sanity are possible when the moment demands it. And so this amendment restores that spirit. We stand now at our own riverbank. We need 185,000 more signatures to get this constitutional amendment on the ballot. In January through early April, in the cold, the snow, the wind, and the rain. Can we do it? Thank you. That was intended to be rhetorical, but that was much better. Great. Because we have to double our number of active signature gatherers. We have to close a fundraising gap. And yes, every single action you take matters. Like Rabbi Bogard taught us today, the Gemara teaches us that the world is held in a perfect balance between good and evil, and our next action can tip the scales and save everyone. One deed can save our state. If you sign up at respectmovoters.org and get a petition board, get trained by Tony or Kathy or Michelle outside. If you gather 10 signatures before walking into a movie theater to see that December hit, if you give 1 2-hour shift a week out in St. Charles outside a grocery store or a DMV, if you donate, if you recruit 4 friends to join the movement, when thousands of people like you take these little steps, each of us, it's Jacob walking towards Esau. It's Moshe walking towards Pharaoh. It's Jonah walking towards Nineveh. It's courage. We can do this, and we must do this. Imagine what will be possible when Missouri voters can pass initiatives for healthcare, for education, for jobs, without politicians undoing all of our hard work. Imagine telling our children and grandchildren that when democracy was threatened, you didn't walk away. We didn't walk away. We crossed the river. We wrestled. We reconciled, and we repaired the breach. Like Yaakov, we're moving forward with gifts of time, courage, justice, and democracy. Like Esau, we're choosing to reconcile and not retaliate. And like Yisrael, we are wrestling for a blessing that will shape generations. Shabbat Shalom.